Solve equations with rational coefficients. Vocabulary startup. Two numbers with a product of 1, such as 3/4 and 4/3, are called reciprocals, or multiplicative inverses. So we're going to complete the graphic organizer. So defining, that is where you have there we go. The two fractions that multiply to give 1. So a descriptor, we have the numerator and denominator of a fraction switch places. Next, we have some examples. So if we have 2/3, then the multiplicative inverse is going to be 3/2. Another example, 1/2 and 2 divided by 1. The multiplicative inverse of 1/2 is 2 divided by 1. Then over here, we're going to list some non-examples. So we have 2 and 1/3. Then we have 7/3. These actually are equal to each other, because if you were to take this mixed number and make it into an improper fraction, it's going to be 7/3. Another example, 1/2 and -1/2. They're not multiplicative inverses. So describe how multiplicative inverse is used in division of fractions. When you divide fractions, you want to multiply the dividend by the multiplicative inverse of the divisor. So for the real world link, how can the action of a motorcyclist in the photo help you remember what the multiplicative inverse is? Well, if you were to look at this motorcyclist right over here to the right, you will notice that he is actually upside down. So let's put that down. The motorcyclist is upside down. So when you're dealing with multiplicative inverses, you switch the numerator and denominator of a fraction in the multiplicative inverse. So which mathematical practices did you use? Shade the circles that apply. So you're going to take a moment and you're going to fill in whichever of the 8 that you used. Okay, so we're going to move on to the inverse property of multiplication. So this is our key concept. So in words, the product of a number and its multiplicative inverse is 1. So here we have numbers as an example. 7/8 times 8/7 equals 1. You can also add in that you would do 7 times 8 divided by 8 times 7, which equals 56 divided by 56, which reduces down to 1. Over here you have -3/2 times -2/3 equals 1. So if it helps, you can show the work of -3 times -2 divided by 2 times 3. When you have fractions, you just multiply them across when you're multiplying those fractions. So a negative times a negative gives you a positive. 3 times 2 gives you 6. 6 divided by 2 times 3 is 6. 6 divided by 6 equals 1. So let's stop and reflect. What is the multiplicative inverse of -3/2? Well, I know it's still got to be a negative. And then taking 3/2 and doing the reciprocal gives you 2/3. So you should have the answer of, -2/3. So continuing, the numerical factor of a term that contains a variable is called the coefficient of the variable. So if we have the term 3x, the coefficient is 3 and the variable is your x. In the equation 3/4c equals 18, the coefficient of c is a rational number. To solve an equation when the coefficient is a fraction, multiply each side by the multiplicative inverse of the fraction. So we want to take this 3/4 and find the multiplicative inverse. I'm going to show my work over here to the left. If I have 3/4c equals 18, my multiplicative inverse of 3/4 is 4/3. So I'm going to multiply my left side by 4/3. And when we're solving equations, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So I'm going to multiply the other side by 4/3. On the left side, this becomes 1. So I have 1c equals, I have 18 times 4/3. Well, 18 I'm going to put divided by 1, because any whole number, it can become a fraction by just dividing it by 1. So 18 divided by 1 times 4/3. You can multiply across if you'd like, but I like to make things simpler, especially numbers, so I'm going to cross reduce. 18 and 3, I can take it out of 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 18 divided by 3 is 6. Now I'm going to multiply across. 6 times 4, 24. Divided by 1 times 1, which is 1. So 1c equals 24 divided by 1, which is simplified to 24. Another way to write this is c equals 24. You don't have to have that 1 out in front, because this indicates that you have at least one c. So your answer would be c equals 24. So if you take a look over here, you'll notice that the same problem is done right here. And each step is written out. So step 1 is to write the equation. Step number 2, multiply each side of the multiplicative inverse of 3/4, which is 4/3. Then you write 18 as 18 divided by 1, and then divide by common factors, which in this case is a 3 and a 3 that you can take out of 3 and 18. Lastly, you're going to simplify. Now, it's always good to go in and check your works, and that way you know whether or not you are correct. So if you have 3/4c equals 18, and instead of putting c, you plug in your answer of 24 into that value, you do 3/4 times 24 equals 18. You take 24 and put it over 1, just like you did up here. And then you can cross reduce. So 24 and 4, you can take out a 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 24 divided by 4 is 6. Then you have 3 times 6, which is 18. 18 equals 18. Check. This sentence is true. So now you're going to try these problems to find out.